For the first time ever, Auburn and Alabama basketball will face off being the top 2 ranked teams in the country. It's also the first time in SEC history. And yeah, you heard that right, in basketball. Now, in a state known for football and the greatest rivalry on the gridiron, sorry, David, we've already been in the golden age of basketball for a while now, but Saturday, we're going to shatter the golden ceiling. If you're like me and you grew up watching both of these teams in basketball, this is truly a monumental moment. And I ask you to put away the hate just for 1 second to enjoy where we both are, at the literal top. Both programs have had some flashes of greatness or success in the past, but they were few and far between. We had to revel in our misery most years, using basketball as a time killer really until football season showed up. But not now, because here in Dixie, basketball is more popular than it's ever been. And I think it's here to stay. All those seasons of despair has led us both to this point. Each team has touched a Final Four in the last decade, and making the NCAA tournament isn't a jubilation anymore, it's an expectation. And making a run in March has become the standard. So after hearing this, let the hate flow through you once again. I know you all will, as we prepare for an in-state matchup unlike anything we have ever seen before. But for just 1 second this Saturday, whether you're at the game or watching, just take a moment to soak it in and see what Coach Pearl, Coach Oates, and the faithful fans of both teams have given us. Pure excellence as we fight at the mountaintop of college basketball. David Cone. Can't believe we're here. I mean, you know, Auburn and Alabama both have been good, pretty good lately. And obviously, you know, I mentioned the coaches and how they'd changed the program. But I never thought in my life, and look, I was one of the mop boys underneath the goal with Cliff Ellis and the Cliff Dwellers and all that stuff. And we were number 1 in the country one year in 1999. Man, I never thought we'd be at this point. It is just, it's incredible to see.
So when you say an in-state rivalry like we've never seen before, you're saying Alabama-Auburn, the new greatest rivalry in college basketball? Is that what you're saying?
Okay. You want? Right, we talked about this before.
Is that what you're saying?
Liquid paper on a B.
If Auburn basketball and Alabama basketball continue to be really good.
What does that mean?
Like, I'm talking about top 3, top 4 seeds in the NCAA tournament regularly.
For 30 years.
Let's say a decade.
50 years.
Let's say a decade. Auburn and Alabama will become a better basketball rivalry than North Carolina and Duke.
Okay.
And now, look, people, again, say, okay,
you're
I get it.
stupid and dumb.
What if North Carolina and Duke, they're like, look, we already got a great rivalry in one sport. And they were like, they met number 1 and number 2
we'll take that.
year in football
We're going to
season,
take that.
And they made the college football playoffs.
There's more
We're
hate.
the new best rivalry.
There's more hate with Auburn and Alabama than there is with North Carolina and Duke overall in all of it. Right? North Carolina and Duke is a basketball rivalry. And some people will say, oh, well, Auburn and Alabama is a football rivalry.
That's what they'll say.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
So
go
what
look
would
at
it
baseball
take for
too.
Duke and North Carolina to be the greatest rivalry in football?
A lot. They'd have to do this. We would have to start getting number 1 Duke versus number 2 North Carolina or vice versa. I'm telling you, the longer this goes on, that place is going to be heat on Saturday. And don't forget, Alabama goes to Auburn the last game of the regular season. That could dictate it. But having said all that, and Blaine, you know this better than anybody.
What?
Auburn and Alabama got to take care of business tonight. Auburn comes up here to Nashville to play Vandy. And that hasn't been a great place for Auburn to play. And Alabama's got to go to Texas.
And that's what, 9.5 points right now?
Yeah, I think Auburn's a 9.5 point favorite, which I took Vandy plus 9.5. I'll do it.
I want to get all your thoughts on this game. I'm excited about this. I know my father-in-law has been calling me all week just to prepare for this game. And the 2 games, really, like you said, at the back end of the season now, which is going to be really cool between Alabama and Auburn, because I think both teams can make a deep run. But I do want to say one thing first. It feels like SEC basketball is benefiting from name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal in a way that some other conferences are benefiting in football. I mean, SEC schools in football for so long were able to stack depth and hoard talent, and now you're seeing that a little bit more dispersed across different conferences in football because of the transfer portal. Is the SEC basketball now benefiting from the same thing?
I think a little bit, yes. I think it would be asinine to say they weren't. But like the money investment from the SEC in basketball started even before NIL was legal. I think you're seeing like kind of a, what's that movie, like The Day After Tomorrow, where all the storms come together? I think it's all come together to this point because when you look at the SEC, we're not just talking about the best conference in college basketball this year. Historically, right now, when you look at the numbers and you match them up against conferences in the past, this is the best conference we have ever seen in college basketball. So
it's too early to say that.
Well, no, I think we're to the point now. I mean, the non-conference.
What if they all get bounced before the Sweet 16?
Well, that's not how they're judging it, right?
Because that's how I'm judging it.
Well, it's again, you look at Ken Palm, you go back and look through the numbers. We're already done with the non-conference. You're halfway through the regular season. There could be 13 SEC teams that get in the NCAA tournament.
But what does that matter if they all get bounced early? Well, that's going to be even more important.
They're not all going to get bounced early because right now I think you got 3 SEC teams that are number 1 seeds. They're not going to all get bounced early. But again, if we're just basing it off what happens in March and that's the only thing that matters, then I think that's kind of a different argument that kind of waters down the argument when you play so many games.
I actually agree with you, but it's the argument that I hear from SEC football fans all the time, which is I don't care what we did in the regular season.
Well, I think they're wrong.
Or in some bowl game that didn't matter. Who was the national champion?
I think that's wrong.
That's what I
think that's a wrong way to go about it. And up until the last couple of years, I don't think that's been true. Not saying the SEC fans haven't said it because they have. Believe me, I've heard them. But I don't agree with that in football, just like I don't agree with it in basketball. Blaine?
Yeah.
How nervous are you for Saturday?
I'm worried. I just don't think Mark Sears should play. I think Alabama will have a better chance to win this game if Mark doesn't play. If he doesn't play, I think Nate knows that. Well, I mean, if we really want to look at the game, first of all, I can't believe we're even in this situation. Like a couple of years ago, if you had asked me, what would you say to me if Auburn was number 1 in the nation going to play in Alabama, who's ranked number 2 in the nation in basketball? I probably would have called you crazy. But this game is where?
It's at Alabama.
It's at Alabama. Auburn is coming off getting absolutely beat to sleep by Florida. If Alabama is going to have success, one, they have to control the pace of the game. Alabama is one of the best in the nation of getting up and down the court and stretching out your defense, and Auburn can get stretched out on defense pretty early, and can Alabama hit threes? If Alabama can hit threes, they're tough to beat, buddy, just like any other basketball team, but they're really good at doing it.
Yeah, but here's the difference, though, I think, with this Alabama team. I think this Alabama team is better than the one I saw last year, and it's for a couple of reasons that you brought up, but I'm kind of on the other side of it. Bama's going to control the pace of the game. Go back and look. I was listening to our friends over at SEC 16 and our buddy Max Barr and them, and they went back and looked when the last time Alabama played in a game that they didn't have 70 possessions. And it's a long time ago. So Alabama's almost pace-proof. Regardless of what happens, they get the ball. The only way to have a chance to slow them down is to make shots and make them inbound the ball from underneath the basket. Because even when Mark Sears gets it after you make a shot, he is flying up the court to get them set. In the past, Bama's been a team that has to make threes. They play that kind of 3-and-D mindset, that NBA mindset, right? 2s at the rim, shoot a lot of threes. And they've made a bunch of them in the past. But this Alabama team, I think, is different. They're not shooting the 3 like they used to. But defensively, they're better, right? From a rebounding standpoint, you look at what Grant Nelson and Cliff and Mo D can do down low. This is kind of a different built Alabama team. I think they're more versatile, so they can get away with not making as many shots. But if you're Auburn, it's funny. I love the matchups, Cone, when you have the best player on one team is a guard, and the best player on the other team is in the front court, is down low. And that's what you have with Mark Sears and Janai Broome. Yeah. But if you're Auburn, after that loss, and this is what we always say, March does matter the most to fans, and that's the standard now. But is this a game where Auburn can bounce back from getting embarrassed at home against Florida? Because I kept telling people, you're going to lose games in basketball, and sometimes it's the best thing that could happen.
Well, you guys called that one, and Florida's really good. You know, it's interesting you asked that because here's the vibe I'm getting from Alabama fans and Auburn fans right now. And again, this is small sample size. This is friends and family. But it feels like Alabama fans are happy that Auburn remained at number 1 in the AP despite that loss to Florida. And it seems like Auburn fans are a little bit disappointed. They wanted Alabama to jump up there to number 1 so they could go on the road to Coleman and beat them. Is that a correct vibe?
But it's, David, that is 100% accurate. I was hoping, when I saw Auburn come out number 2 in the coaches poll, I was hoping they would be number 2 in the AP poll. Because, again, not that at the end of the day when the ball's tipped, they're not going to be like, hey, we're playing the number 1 team. Mark Sears is not going to determine whether he makes a shot or not. But just kind of going into the game, it's going to be, well, we beat number 1 Auburn, and then obviously Alabama would probably end up being number 1, and they may stay there until they go to Auburn to play them later. But I wanted Auburn to be number 2. I'm not afraid to say that.
So what's the line going to open at? Right now, the line's not open, and we don't have a point total. That'll happen later in the week. What should the line be with this game being at Alabama?
I'd probably say -1.5 Auburn.
You think -1.5 Auburn?
Favorite on the road?
I think it's going to be Bama -1 or -1.5. Which is basically a pick 'em. If you're Auburn, you have got to get back. The offense, obviously, you got to make shots. You got to score. Auburn's got to get back to playing really good defense. And against Florida, you heard Bruce Pearl say it. They kind of abandoned the game plan defensively after the first couple possessions, and then Walter Clayton Jr., absolutely ripped them apart.
How healthy is Jani Broome?
He's not going to be. This is how it's going to be.
I mean, do you sit him in the Vandy game?
Here's what I think you do. No, I don't think you sit him in the Vandy game, which is what Florida did with Walter Clayton Jr. What I think you do is you sit him for the SEC tournament once you get there to see how well you can.
Is that a momentum killer?
Because you're going to get a bye? I don't think so. I mean, Auburn played a couple games without him. They were fine. I don't think Jani's going to forget. But to try and get him as healthy as possible for the NCAA tournament, that's what I would do.
That could be a good strategy.
It's a historic matchup. I never thought we would ever get here, and obviously want to know what you guys think, and that's where we're going to go.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? Do us a favor. We all know ESPN is trash and most of that other stuff is. So why not hit the subscribe button? Be a cool person.